If you're new to Mo Talks, then welcome. Appreciate you guys tuning in. So if you have a significant other or a spouse with you guys, I hope to hear some input from you guys, because tonight's topic is going to be very interesting. While we wait to get started, I do want to put in the next topic of discussion that I would like to talk about is going to be about growing pains. And when I say growing pains, I mean growing pains in a relationship and in a marriage. Things that we face, things that we go through, choices that we make. So that's going to be our next most talk. If it's not this week, it'll be next week. But I'll definitely keep you guys posted. All right. So it's 8 o'clock and we're going to go ahead and get started here. So today we're going to talk about pushing each other's buttons and what it takes to push your button, other people's button, and how you react when your buttons are pushed. So a little bit about what I have been in conversation with some other people is basically soft spots towards touchy topics. So let's say, for example, a lot of times we know and a lot of times we don't know the things that are sensitive to someone that we care about, someone that we loved, a friend, a family member, but more importantly, our spouse or significant other. So we often know the things to say that piss them off, more or less, right? So most times, out of respect and understanding, we try not to cross those boundaries and we try not to push those buttons. And even for ourselves, sometimes in the heat of the moment, in the heat of an argument, or in petty instances, those buttons deliberately get pushed. But there are also times where we can hit a button or one of our buttons get pushed that isn't intentional. So the question then becomes, how do we handle that? How do we handle when our buttons are intentionally pushed? And how do we handle when our buttons are accidentally pushed? Because a lot of times when we come into relationships and into marriages or relationships, period, we have baggage. And when I say baggage, I mean we have things that have scarred us or that have traumatized us. And that causes us to be sensitive and have a soft spot or a button that can be pushed that we're sensitive to and that affects us. So how do we handle that? How do we handle when your buttons are being pushed and how in a relationship or in that instance? Have you snapped at someone because they unconsciously pushed your buttons? And that could be someone that you care about or even a random stranger. Because let's think about it, for example. If a random stranger says something to you or does something to you, your initial reaction may be like would you say? Or did he really just? And then a lot of times, depending on your reaction, you can react and it can start a conflict. Yeah, it could start a major conflict. But then what if that same thing happens with someone that you care about, someone that you love, or your significant other? Do you have that same reaction? Or do you know or believe that it is or is not intentional? And then what do you do? Team Cancer. Sorry, looking at the notes from the conversations that I've had. So what we have to do in instances like this is we have to know who we're dealing with and who we are talking to in order to then know how to handle the situation. But more importantly, you have to know yourself. You have to know that the person that you're dealing with, whether it's your spouse, whether it's a friend, a family member, whether it's a stranger, whether they know what it is that they're doing whether it's intentional or whether it's not intentional. Because let's say, for example, an intentional button that is pushed with someone that you care about and someone that you love, and they deliberately decide to say something that's going to piss you off, right? You have to be comfortable and strong-willed in your own self and in your own right to control your reaction. And we're going to talk about being reactive and not being reactive later on in another topic, but it kind of all ties together. Because when you're very reactive and you're instantly reactive to things that people say to you, it's only going to cause further conflict. So you have to then know yourself and know the things that you have been through, and then know how you can heal yourself. Because let's say it's like a bruise. Let me use a bruise as an example. Your soft spot is like a bruise. Somebody else's soft spot is like a bruise. So when someone is trying to heal through something that they have been traumatized with in a previous relationship or in life, it takes time for that bruise to heal, or that cut or that wound to heal. And if you don't allow it enough time to heal and people are pushing on it, then it stays tender and it stays sore. So you have to then understand the person that is pushing your button and understand whether they're pushing it deliberately or they're pushing it unintentionally. So having said that, we're going to talk about intentional button pushers. So if your significant other, or you, for example, are one of those people that pushes on that bruise before that bruise is healed, continuously making it tender and continuously making it a soft spot in that person's life, you're never going to allow time for that bruise to heal. And when someone is intentionally doing that, you have to then ask yourself who they are to you, who you are to them, and how you're going to move forward with those buttons and those bruises and those soft spots being intentionally pushed. And sometimes we have to set boundaries. We have to set boundaries in order for the person that is intentionally pushing your button to understand that they cannot continue to push on that bruise because you're trying to get it to heal. And if they know you and they understand you, then they will know that whatever you have been through historically or in your past relationship or in your life, that it's something that you're trying to work through. And you can't continue to allow them to push those buttons. And you can't continue to push those buttons and those soft spots on someone else, especially if you love them. Now, if it is unintentional, we have to then ask ourselves, if an unintentional button is pushed, if an unintentional bruise is being tampered with, how do you react to that? You have to be in control to know how to. You have to be okay with putting yourself first. You do have to be okay with putting yourself first, but you have to know yourself. And if you don't know yourself and have control, then you're not going to be able to understand that when that button is pushed, that it is actually unintentional. If it is in fact unintentional, because you know when somebody's constantly pushing your buttons, especially those deliberate buttons that are being pushed. So when an unintentional button is being pushed, when you have a soft spot, when you have something that is tender, that is traumatic, that has happened in your life, whether it's a past relationship or just in life period, and someone accidentally says something or does something to you that triggers those memories, that causes you to react, what do you do and how do you handle it? And that's something that you have to know within yourself, and in order to be able to control your reaction. So instead of being reactive, you have to then sometimes just be still and understand that they don't know what you've been through. and they don't know your history, and they don't know that that's a bruise and that's a soft spot that you're trying to get to heal for an unintentional act. Now, back to someone that's intentionally pushing your buttons. When you have a significant other or a brother or a sister or a cousin or an auntie or a friend that knows the things that upset you and knows the things that piss you off and that hurt, and know that these are things that have been historical in your life, or that has been historical in your life, whether it's singular or plural, and they constantly do that to you, and they constantly open that wound or push on that bruise that doesn't allow it to heal, you have to learn how to set boundaries. But how you set those boundaries makes all of the difference. Again, back to being reactive. You can't set a boundary by being reactive and lashing out and saying, I'm not going to tolerate this and I'm not going to do this. You have to sometimes, within yourself, distance yourself and put up that wall. Not necessarily a wall, but a boundary area. Kind of like an out of bounds line. You know what I mean? So when they push you that far, since we're in football season, why not? So when they push you that far and they cross that line, they know they're out. Like, that's it. Point blank. And that's one of the things that I know personally. I know have been in certain situations with friends, family members, and relationships that happens more often than we would like. It happens to us. I'm sure we do it to other people. And sometimes, you have to ask yourself the question of, do you love this person enough to control yourself enough to not push those buttons? Even though you're trying to get a reaction, even though you're trying to get something out of them that they may have done to you. It's that tit for tat, the petty stuff. But what you have to understand is they're trying to heal. Do you love them enough to allow them to heal? Do you love them enough to understand that it's a process? It's a healing process, and everything takes time. Hey, Stone, happy belated birthday. Everything takes time. And without allowing those bruises, wounds, and cuts to heal, we're just continuously putting them in a traumatic event, making them relive an instance that they have lived before. And it doesn't help them, and it doesn't help you, which in turn doesn't help your relationship with that person. So we have to be a little bit more self-conscious on the things that we say, the things that we do to others, but the things that we allow others to do to us, and the things that we allow and accept from them as well. So having said all of that, do we have anyone that has an example or have any input to say? Anyone want to chime in? You want me to dial you in here on Instagram? I know I can do it on Instagram. I'm not sure if I could do it on Facebook. Anybody? Any votes? You have to be okay putting yourself first. Yeah, I read that one. No? Well, if that's the case, then I'm going to go into what I mentioned earlier as far as growing pains. Now, a lot of times when you're in a relationship, one of those things that, as far as button pushing, it's part of the pains that we go through in a relationship or friendship that is inevitable, so to speak, and that is painful. But again, with boundaries and understanding yourself, which the most important part about being in a relationship or having a friendship or being in a marriage is knowing yourself. I've had to make effort to not push buttons, taking short-term L's for long-term gain. That's definitely important. If you can look at the long haul, at the bigger picture, then that will often help you understand that the temporary satisfaction you may get from being petty or from pushing somebody's button is not going to be as fulfilling as long-term healing and the fulfillment that you would get from the relationship, the growth of that relationship. and the growth of the healing process, because that process is a very, very important process when you think about long-term relationships. I've had to make an effort. Oh yeah, I already read that. So, having said that, and when we start talking about long-term gain, we start talking about growing pains, because with all of the buttons that you push in a relationship and the petty back and forth instances that happen, you have to end up growing through that pain. So you cause pain, and then that pain then becomes reactive, because the other person probably wants to do the same thing, and then it's a back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then you have to grow through that, and you have to heal through that. So sometimes it makes more issues and more pain than initially, than what they're already going through or already battling with to begin with, from historical problems or historical relationships and situations. So, excuse me as I fix this head wrap real quick. As men, it's up to us to lead. We can't get into the back and forth with our lady. That's trash. We have to do better. But it's not just with men. And you have to understand, like, a lot of men seem to believe that they have to swallow and eat all of the things that come out of their woman's mouth. One, because they have to maintain self-control. But two, because a lot of times, as how can I say, there's a stereotype, I think if that's the right word that I'm looking for, when it comes to things that men should say and do, and when it comes to things that women should say and do. And that's not the case, because there should be no reason why, yes, a man should be able to lead, but a woman should be able to lead too, because who are you leading for? Are you leading the way for other men or other women? Are you leading the way for your children, which could be a son or a daughter? Because those are all things that you have to consider. So yeah, as a man, you want to lead the way, and you can't get back and forth into it with your lady, as Sean said, but it's more than that, because you can't just, and that goes back to the boundaries that I was talking about. Because even if, let's say, for example, as a man, the woman is off the mouth and just bugs out anytime, all day, whenever, or the drop of a dime, no matter where you are, that becomes tiring and that becomes draining. And if that man has gone through something traumatic in a past relationship, all that woman is doing is triggering those same memories and triggering those same instances and feelings and tapping on that bruise that has yet to be healed. So yeah, I get it, Sean, but that doesn't make it acceptable for a woman just if a man decides to not go back and forth, because as a man, you still want to set those boundaries. And the same thing for a woman. If someone's constantly pushing those buttons, and those buttons are soft spots, and like I said earlier, those bruises, then how are you ever going to heal from that? You're not. And you want to lead the way, you want to avoid going back and forth, but to what extent? And with what sacrifice? Are you going to sacrifice yourself, your own feelings, your own healing process, just to avoid the back and forth? Having self-control is important, but most importantly, you have to be able to heal. And the person that you're going back and forth with should understand and respect the fact that you need to heal, and you're trying to heal. And by pushing those buttons constantly, it's not happening, and it's not going to happen. So I get what you're saying, Sean, but it doesn't make it okay for a man or for a woman, because there should be no reason why anyone should have to put up with the possible chance of going back and forth or swallowing something that's constantly hurting them and traumatizing them more from the trauma that they've already endured in previous relationships or in their life in general. So, yeah, but no. What else we have? Anybody else has something to add? I know a few people kind of just joined in. Who wants me to bring them on? Moment of silence. Okay, so I'm gonna go on and I'm gonna go ahead and extend this talk. That's why communication is so important. You have to be able to tell that person when they've gone too far in a mutual, respectful way, or the other also has to be receptive and open. Hey, boo. So, yes, communication is vital. And not only communication, but knowing who you're dealing with. I spoke earlier about buttons that are being pushed intentionally and unintentionally. So yes, in a relationship, communication is vital, and yes, in a relationship, communication is important because without communication, you'll never know and understand your partner. You'll never know and understand the things that are sensitive to them, the things that are painful to them, the things that are traumatic to them, and you'll never understand or know that they have a bruise that they're trying to heal or a wound that they're trying to heal, and you keep pushing that button, not allowing them to heal. So yes, communication is important. However, when unintentional buttons are pushed, whether it be with a stranger, somebody at the store, at the mall, somebody that you may be in a new relationship with or a new friendship with, that push a button and they didn't know that they pushed that button, you still have to be in control enough to handle that in a way that will then allow for that person to know and understand that they have just pushed a button, or be in control enough to just let it go, to know yourself and say, you know what, they didn't know that they just pushed a soft spot. They didn't know that they pushed a button just now, so I'm going to let that go, and I'm going to just take it and try to get over it. That takes a lot of willpower and a lot of control to be able to deal with those unintentional buttons that get pushed. And you may do the same. You may push someone's button that you didn't intend to because you didn't know that something was a soft spot to them, right? So you have to then be receptive to that as well. If you push someone's button and they react, they may lack that self-control and that willpower to control their response to you, and they may bug out. But you have to be understanding. You may be confused. You may be like, I didn't mean to. But you have to then understand that and be willing to say, damn, I probably just hit a spot and I didn't mean to. And sometimes you got to chalk it up and apologize. It's okay. It's definitely okay. But you have to be aware there are levels to that. I'll have more patience with family and friends, but strangers are probably just going to get mad. Yeah, but no. Like, when the person is petty, it doesn't matter to them that you're trying to heal from past baggage. All right, first I'm gonna talk about Sean's response. Sean, you're making it sound like we're in high school and somebody called you a name and you don't like this name and you're just gonna bug out and start fighting. Yeah, but no. Like, at that point, you have to ask yourself, yo, am I still in high school or am I a grown adult? And I know it's not right. Yeah, it's not right. And I'm glad that you know it's not right. Because it's not. Like, there comes a point in our life where we have to decide whether we're going to grow up or not. To Nicole, when the person is petty, it doesn't matter to them that you're trying to heal from the past or not. Yeah, but no. I mean, it depends on who you're dealing with. And again, that comes with setting those boundaries. Because let's say, for example, you're in a relationship or you're in a marriage and someone is trying to be petty towards you and they know the things that hurt you and they know that you're trying to heal from that past, but they keep pushing that button. You eventually are going to have to set a boundary. You're going to have to figure out what it is and how it is you're going to set your limitations from someone being able to push that button. Because otherwise, you're just going to allow them to keep keep pushing it, pushing it, pushing it, pushing it, and pushing it. And you're never going to heal from it. And you're going to constantly be reminded of the very thing that made you feel that way to begin with. And reliving any type of traumatic event or any type of instance that makes you feel that type of pain is not pleasant. So unless you want to continue to relive that, you're going to have to set boundaries. Great points. Thank you. I don't know if I missed any other comments. Let me see. It's time to go then. Yeah. Ultimately, sometimes that's what it takes. Sometimes it takes walking away from that person and walking away from that instance and that situation. And it's not easy. It's not easy at all. But sometimes you have to. Sometimes that person that's intentionally pushing those buttons and intentionally hurting you, you got to chuck up them deuces and be like, later for you. And that's real. Because if they're not willing to understand and help you heal, then they're not for you. My buttons are cut off. I only get mad when it has to do with someone else. I don't even understand what that means. My buttons are cut off. I only get mad when it has to do with someone. Do you mean when it has to do with someone that you love? Because I know I'm that way. I know my friends are that way. Like if my friends know that someone's pushing my buttons, they're going to get mad for me. And if I know that somebody's pushing my friend's button, I'm going to get mad for them too. I remove myself from people pushing my buttons. And that's good. And sometimes you have to remove yourself. Sometimes you have to remove yourself, like I said, from those instances, from those people, and from those circumstances or environments. Because it could be an entire environment that just makes you feel a certain type of way and riled up. And sometimes it's even with your job. Like these relationships can be coworkers or your boss that's intentionally doing things, that's putting you in this mind state that disturbs your peace. I have cousins I haven't spoke to in a year or so, and sometimes that's real. Sometimes you have to distance yourself from family members or from friends or from loved ones because you know that they don't have your best interest in mind and in their hearts. So that's completely understandable. Sometimes it's hard to leave when you love someone, but you have to know when you're endured enough. And that's a fact, Danielle. That's definitely true. So again, that goes back to what Sean said earlier. You have to love yourself enough to know when enough is enough. And that's a complete fact. And I mean, if you think about it, let's talk about people that are in domestic relationships. They will love all day. And they feel like love should conquer all. But what they don't realize is they're sacrificing themselves and not loving themselves enough. And they're enduring all of this abuse until eventually they figure out enough is enough and they leave. And sometimes they don't. And what does it end up doing? It not only hurts them and traumatizes them more, but sometimes it kills them. Like legit, like literally. So yeah, enough is all. People have a limit on their tolerance. I know I do. Like I have a very high tolerance, but with certain things, the tolerance gets lower and lower and lower. So when enough is enough, enough is enough. Anybody else? Anything else? Before I bring this talk to a close, I still haven't had anyone willing to chime in with me or to join me. It's okay. One day, someone would be bold enough. Hey, Keisha. You just joined in on the end, girl. All right, y'all. Well, it's been real. It's been fun. Interesting topic today. Definitely want to get booming on the next topic. I haven't decided whether I'm going to do it this week or next week, but I will definitely keep you guys posted. I mentioned one of the topics earlier that I want to talk about, and then I have some other topics that I really want to talk about that are really interesting. And one of them is actually going to be taxation without representation, and how we feel about immigration and immigrants and everything that's happening here with Trump and stuff. So that's going to be our next topic. Hopefully Roscoe can join me in on that topic, because I know he's very passionate when it comes to a lot of that stuff. Hey. So we're going to wrap it up. I'm sorry for those of you guys that missed it. It's definitely going to be posted up on Facebook and on Instagram for the next 24 hours, but on Mo Talks group page on Facebook, all the episodes are posted on there. But love you guys. Later.